What's up, guys? My name is Adam and you are watching the MSR Workshop. So I have got a big video to drop today. So we are going to be converting this Umarex Notos to the bottle. We are going to be installing a carbon fiber bottle. We are going to be installing a regulator kit with a drop block. Also, we are going to be taking this block off right here and we are going to be enlarging it to, I think, probably about 4 millimeters. So to start with, we're going to take this block off, we're going to enlarge it, I'll show you how to port that out, and then put it back together and see what kind of change we get just from doing that modification. Then after that, we'll go to the next step, which is actually putting the regulator on it, adjusting the regulator, and adding the carbon fiber bottle. We're going to do everything step by step. Don't know how this is going to work, but I'm really excited to try and take you along for the journey. So let's get this gun taken apart and get started. So before we took anything apart, I wanted to get a baseline for you guys so you know what kind of results we're getting with just doing this simple modification here. So I did an 11-shot string and my average was 623 feet per second, and that is with absolutely no modifications to the gun whatsoever. It is completely stock. There's no hammer spring adjustment, nothing. My extreme spread was 31 feet a second, my standard deviation was 9, and I was using 21 grain slugs. Now, my feet per second probably would have gone up quite a bit if I had used a lot lighter pellet. But I just wanted to see what slugs would do because I know people like to use slugs because over a long distance they seem to be pretty stable. So this is what we're getting as a baseline. Now let's jump over and drill our block to see what kind of improvements we can get. So getting started here, the first thing you're going to do is take your little handy dandy Allen wrench and degas your gun. Now, almost the entirety of this video, you're going to be using 3 size Allen wrenches. You're going to be using a 2, a 2.5, and a 3 millimeter Allen wrench. Almost everything in here is going to be used with those 3 sizes. So degas that, make sure all of it's out in here. A little psh at the end that lets you know that all the gas is out. Once that's done, be sure and tighten that back. And if you forget, you'll know because you won't be able to air it up. Then just go ahead and grab your tank and you should be able to unscrew it quite easily. And once you've got this unscrewed, you can kind of go ahead and set this guy aside because you won't actually ever be needing it anymore unless you decide to go back to this little tank here. And the next thing you're going to do is grab your little Allen wrench. I believe the top one here is a 2.5 as well, but don't quote me on that. But it's one of those 3 sizes. And I grabbed the wrong one there. Yep, I believe it's the 2.5. So unscrew that one. Once that one is out, be sure and set that one aside so you don't lose it. And then right underneath that one is a little bitty tiny grub screw. And that is going to be your 2 millimeter size. I know that because it's the smallest one of all of the screws that you'll be removing. So underneath here, and that's the one that holds the barrel onto the gun. So back that guy out. And this is the one you definitely don't want to lose. See, little bitty guy there. And now you should just be able to kind of push with your thumb and the whole barrel and the top Picatinny rail assembly will all come off. Now that you've pushed this off, this is a fantastic time to go ahead and check the O-rings on your barrel. And I've heard that there have been problems with point of deviation shift, and this is usually because there's 2 little tiny O-rings right here that get nicked. And the way they get nicked is where the barrel is threaded and it pushes through, there's a little bit of flashing that sometimes doesn't get cleaned off by the manufacturer, and it actually will tear and nick these little O-rings. So that's a great time to check that. So now setting that aside, we are going to look at the next part of the gun and kind of figure out what we need to do next. So just giving this a look over, you actually have to unscrew it from the back side and the front side to remove this block. So you will have to remove your stock. Now, if you've got one of these guns, you know how easy it is because it came without it installed. So this is where you go back and grab your 2.5mm or 1mm. Pretty sure it's the 2mm though, and there's one or two on each side. So the 2.5mm. Now that we've got that pushed out, you can see that right under that thumb trigger guard, whatever you want to call it, because there's not really a hammer, you've got one screw to remove and then one right underneath there. Now this is probably the only time that you'll use the largest of those 3 Allen wrenches that I've said. And so you'll back this guy out, and then you'll actually go to a different size right under here. No, I take the back. Same size. And take this guy off. Now be very careful when you pull this off because there is a little bitty tiny spring in here and you don't want to lose that, and that's your trigger spring there. So once you've got that, kind of set that aside, just kind of keeping track of it. I left mine in because it was kind of secured in there. There's probably got a little water grease that's holding it in there. Now you'll see the 2 screws on the back of that air block that you'll take off. Don't have to hold anything down taking out this side, but once you've taken these 2 out, the other side is when you're going to kind of have to hold it down with one of your fingers because there is a spring behind that and it is under spring pressure. So this is where you grab that large Allen wrench, backing those guys out. And these are a bit longer than the rest. Most all of the others are about the same size. And now I put my finger over the top here, and as you'll see, I'll have to go and grab that one size smaller to start backing these out. And as you back them out, that spring tension is released. So I'll release them here, a number, and then you can kind of see kind of how the amount of spring tension is in there. Just pops up and down. So kind of push it down, hold it there, and you should be fine. Once you've gotten both of them out, just kind of be careful when you lift up so your spring doesn't just go popping and you lose that. So this is the little block that we are going to be drilling out. Now also, this is a good time to just kind of inspect this area and clean any little bits of debris that may have been left over from your manufacturing. And just take a look over at this, make sure your seals and O-rings are good. Alright, so this is the hole that we're going to drill out right now. So this is a 3mm bit, and this fits in there perfectly, so that's how we know that we are at 3mm. So we are going to drill it out to 4mm and see what kind of improvement we get. So I have a Nova DVR drill press, so we're going to start off by going to our menu, drill bits. We are using a 4mm, so we're going to set that, and we are going to be drilling aluminum. So we'll set that. That sets at us about 3,000 RPMs, and hit confirm, and then we are going to be ready to go. Now, if you've got a drill press, most people are not going to have this type of drill press, but I would go ahead and set it as fast as it will go. So let's get to drilling on this. So I didn't bore you with the stuff where I put it all back together, and I just put the bare minimum back together. But we're now out back in the range, and we are going to test the after effects of just drilling that block. So I didn't change anything with pellets. We're using the exact same 21 grain pellets. And before we were getting 623, don't pay attention to what's on the screen right now. But first shot, 649. That one's an error, but that one said 649. That's the same as the last shot. 647. 646. 639. 637. 639. 642. 646. Alright, so here is our actual chronograph readings. I did an 8-shot string this time. I had to throw out a couple because I had a couple errors. But we are averaging 642 feet per second, so we got a 19 foot per second increase just by enlarging that hole to 4 millimeters. So standard deviation of 1 and our extreme spread was only 3. So very nice little kick, and that is before we even adjusted the hammer spring. So now let's try adjusting the hammer spring and see what we can get. So here is a look at the hammer spring increase. Now I know what somebody's going to say, oh, you only took 1 shot. And yes, this only does reflect 1 shot. I actually took quite a few more shots, and I was getting all the way up to 680, I think, on my first shot. So I did get a big bump. But as you can see on this 1 shot, I was getting 665 with just turning the hammer spring on the back of the gun all the way up. So pretty big jump there as well. So we went all the way from 623 with no modifications to a little modifications and a crank of the hammer spring, and we all jumped all the way up to 665. So now for the fun part, we are going to do the bottle conversion and add the dual regulator. So this part here is just a rinse and repeat. Remove your bottom tank by degassing it, take your 2 nuts out of the top, and you're going to slide your barrel and top Picatinny rail off. So our next part that we got here is something that I ordered off of AliExpress, and I'll be sure and leave links to all of these. Now, when you look at it on AliExpress, they ask if you want to order a long or short. It doesn't matter because we are unscrewing a part. So here is what it comes in the box. Now, if you look closely at the dials, they are registering an MPa. MPa is easy to convert to bars. If you want, you just add a 0. So, for instance, you go to a 10 on here, just add another 0, that would be 100 bars. 15, 150 bars. 20, 200 bars, so on and so forth. So the conversion is actually quite simple. So this is the part we are going to screw off, and fingers crossed that this screws right onto there. Now I've heard some people say that you've got to do a little clocking, which is make sure you get it straight when you screw it back on the gun, but we are going to find out. This is where the alignment ends up. We want it to be this way, just like that. So we actually need to take a little bit of metal off so it screws on just a little bit further. So this can be one more revolution. So we're going to go over here, and I will show you what I'm going to do to get this off. So the first thing you're going to want to do before you do any of this metal removal is go ahead and take your water paper towel, just shove that down in there, and that's going to keep contamination out of there. Okay, good. All right, and for the boring part, I am using a granite plate, which I know is perfectly flat, and I'm using 2 grits of sandpaper. I'm starting with a 150. We'll see how fast this goes. Once I know I'm starting to get closer, I'll switch to the 400, just kind of refine my scratch pattern so it looks a little bit better. So periodically stop, pull your paper towel out, and check it, and this will let you know how close you are getting. So right before you start removing metal, I recommend watching the tip after this little clip.
A few moments later.
All right, so after a bunch of sanding, you're going to be left with something that looks like this, and that's from the 400 grit. Now, one thing you got to do is these threads in here actually don't go all the way to the bottom of this regulator block here, which means when you start adding length or scooting it in, this is going to bottom out on those threads, which means you can't screw it in anymore. So one thing you want to do before you actually start sanding that block is shorten this guy. Now I've seen somewhere where they've said they need to tap down farther in here. You don't really need to do that. You just need to take off a little bit of material here. So I took off, if you can see that, about that much material. So when I screw it in, it doesn't hit the bottom of those threads. And I just did that on a belt sander. It doesn't need to be precise just because you're needing to take material off. And that's not a sealing face anyways. You're sealing up against this gasket and this block here. So let's go ahead and thread this on and see what we're left with. Now, one thing you want to make sure to do is clean your inside out of any little metal particles, and then put your silicone grease on your gaskets and on your threads. So getting to the bottom here. And so that's where I'm at right now. And I should be able to push that down almost perfectly flat. Give that another little push. And we are right in line now. And you just want to creep up on it like I did, so it's hand tight like that, and then push it that last little bit of a way. So this is nice and secure, so it is not going to go anywhere. So that was really easy. I was worried it was going to be hard, but just a little bit of sanding and just to shorten those threads there, and we are left with something that looks great. So next we are going to go ahead and leave this little guy on here. We'll use this as a mini tank to set our regulators. All right, next we are going to go ahead and fill this up a little bit. Sorry for a little bit of noise. And we're going to go ahead and fill it up to, let's say 25 MPa, which is actually 250 bars. All right, so we are up to pressure now. So we are going to want to turn this counterclockwise to raise the pressure. $15, $16, and we'll go to about 17. And that's where a gentleman on one of the videos that's done this before has set his. So we'll let the pressure off here. Take it off here, and we have our nice little handy dandy field probe, or degassing. And now we are ready to put this gun back together and screw on our bottle. Alright guys, it's time to put it back together, which you should already know how to do because we've done this twice already. So make sure you lube all of your O-rings up so they are nice and lubricated so nothing gets dried out or damaged as we put things back together. And one thing I would like to ask is you guys be sure and hit that like and subscribe button because unfortunately YouTube does not like this video and I do not get monetized. So I don't make anything off of this video unless people subscribe for me. So that would be greatly appreciated. And once this is all put together, we're going to go out and do some shooting. One thing I did do is screw the hammer spring all the way in, so we're going to get the max velocity on this when we start to shoot. Now you can mess with the regulator some more, but 17 MPa is where it supposedly is a good starting place. This is a 300cc carbon bottle. They make a 250, which is the smallest one that I have been able to find. So I went ahead and went with the 300 one. Seems to be a really good quality. Got it off AliExpress, but I'll make sure to leave links where I got all of this stuff. Overall, I am really happy with the way this is looking, and I can't wait to find out how it shoots. Alright guys, everything is put back together. We have this pumped up to official right about 300 bars. Take a look at the regulators. And we are going to attempt the first shots out of this guy. And hopefully I get some really great, insane power numbers out of this thing. Let's take a look at the chronograph and see what kind of magic we've got. Hey, 785. 821, there we go, starting to settle in a little bit. Okay people, check this out. 13 shots, I am getting 820 feet per second average. My extreme spread is 11 feet per second and my standard deviation is 3. Now I did switch to a lighter 14 grain pellet, and that's obviously going to give you a higher feet per second. So I will go ahead and do this with the heavy pellets as well. But I went from 623 feet per second to 820 feet per second average. So I am extremely happy with the results. Let me know what you guys think of this, but I'll go ahead and throw up the results from those 21 grain pellets next. So let's take a look over at this final one. So out of a 15 shot string, my average is 637 feet per second. So it's not the huge changes that I saw before, but it's still pretty darn good. I did see a little bit of an increase from 623 average the first time before no modifications to after all the modifications and adding the bigger tank. We went to 637. So 14 foot per second difference. So my extreme spread here was 16 and my standard deviation of 4. So still looking really accurate, really consistent. So the takeaway from this is you're not going to be able to push a heavy pellet super fast. The lighter pellets seem to perform really well. So you're probably going to want to stick to lighter pellets with the Notos. Now, future upgrades, you might find me looking at aftermarket barrels or any other little tips and tricks that I might see come out. I might do another video on just to see if I can't push this a little bit more. But, I mean, if you're wanting to keep this within budget, I don't necessarily think that getting an aftermarket barrel or spending the money on the gun might be the best option. You might want to just save up and buy a complete package that's meant to do it a little bit better. Now, if you're just like a tinkerer like me and just want to see what you can push an inexpensive gun to, that might be an option also. But let's get this video wrapped up and summarize what we've learned here. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. I am extremely happy with the way this turned out. This was not hard to do. So if any of you are out there are looking to convert your Umarex Notos to the bottle, I highly recommend it. As you saw, it didn't take a whole lot of sanding. I didn't, film the whole thing because I'm just sure you didn't want to watch that. but just get it to, you know, where it's almost there, and then tighten it really tight the rest of the way. Now there's a couple little things on this that I would check, because if you have any leaks, a few things. This screw right here, which is the fill port, was a little bit loose. I was leaking air out of there. This guy right here, this isn't actually a valve shutoff. So you can actually screw this all the way in, and this does not allow a tank from the block to get into the tank. So if you get out there and man, this filled up really quick, you shoot it and it instantly goes down on your regulator. This is screwed in. So just back this out a little bit. This allows air from the block to fill the tank. So that's the other thing. It comes with a whole bunch of washers and O-rings, and if you feel like you have one that's not fitting quite good, there's a couple in there to test. Now I did get an increase just drilling that little block out. So if you're interested in doing that and none of the other modifications, that's a very simple one to do. It doesn't cost you anything other than a 4mm drill bit. If you guys have any comments, questions, or suggestions, be sure and leave them below. I do respond to all of the comments. Also, I will make sure to leave links of all the parts that I got in case you want to do this yourself. But until next time, guys, thanks again.
What are you doing?